Mr. Kenneth Eastaff on Monday the 11th of October at 2 p.m. Hello Ken.
Hello there.
Can you tell me, what yard did you live in?
Well, we lived at the top of Ram Yard, at the shop at the top of the yard.
An actual shop at the top?
Yeah.
So what shop
It was part of the Ram Yard. My mother had the shop, and it was the head of Ram Yard, as you'd say.
Onto Long
On
Street?
Long Street, yeah.
And what did the shop sell?
Mostly large boxes of chocolates and huge Easter eggs and all that sort of thing, and sweets, but in the main confectionery and some groceries.
So how old were you?
When I moved there, I was 7. There's a tale to tell about that. I don't know.
No, you carry on.
We had a little shop in Stanley Road, which was originally built by Tommy Slack, you might have come across, for a pub, brand new place. But the powers that be wouldn't grant him a licence to have a pub there. So my mother happened to be aware of this and opened it as a little shop instead. But then she had a thing about wanting to be on Long Street where the business was, you know. So she wanted to do well.
Yeah.
So we decided to find out that this shop in Long Street was available. So we all came down to live there, but it appears that it was one of the biggest mistakes of her life.
Oh dear.
When she saw the state of the property, no wonder it's not a slum clearance area, you know, but she wanted to go straight back after about a year, but then the war came a couple of 3 years later, and there was no movements about, you know, so we were stuck.
Right. So was it a shop before your mum took it on?
Oh yeah, it was a shop, and I think there'd been lots of things. It's quite an ancient place.
So what was the name of your mum's shop?
Eastaff.
Right. And confectionery.
Yeah.
So that must have been brilliant as a child, chocolate everywhere.
Well, I had bad teeth.
He lost his teeth very early.
So how many houses were in the yard?
Well, it was a sort of a double yard. There's one entry, only narrow, but once you got through the original piece, it split into 2.
Right.
And there was a little wall, well, not so little, about 4 or 5 feet high, split it into 2 as it went up the yard. So there were about 5 houses in our side, which I call an outside, because that's where the shop was, and 3 plus a detached one. I don't know how that came about, to have a detached house at the top of the yard, but that was on the other side.
Right. And how many different families were there? With the lodgers and all sorts as well?
Anything could be happening, but we sort of tried to not involve ourselves too much with the, not that we were above, but it's so difficult with the, you see, the yard, the toilets were at the top of the yard, so when we wanted to go to the toilet, we had to pass through in front of all the other houses, and we got a key to the toilets. We were the only ones with a key to the toilets.
Oh, so you were quite privileged with a toilet in the yard then?
Very privileged, yes.
Because weren't a lot of them just sort of soil heap type
no,
things?
They were what used to be called tippler lavatories. There was a huge drop down to the communal sewer, down to the sewer, and you had to sort of put water on them, you know, to get rid of the waste.
Not too deep, Margaret, it wasn't. Oh. It used to flush every so often, which was unusual in those days, I suppose, but it flushed. But the thing was, you was in your toilet, and the flush came through from the other toilets underneath you. So you had everybody's
waste going underneath.
Yeah, that was our privilege to have this key to
So were you the only ones using it?
That one, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, very posh.
You were,
previously, the person had run it as a cafe shop, hadn't they?
So that was their public toilet for the
Possibly.
cafe.
No,
That might
so.
explain the key, I don't know.
Yes, they could find the key because the shop was separate as such, and I'd like to give the people who run the shop just that bit extra privilege, you know.
Presumably your rent went up as a consequence.
Yeah.
You probably paid for it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And there was the same thing with the wash house. I'm jumping the gun here, aren't I?
No, you carry on. So the wash house, yeah.
It was there, and
was that next to your toilet, or?
yeah, and it had so many coppers in for
heating up your water.
Heating people's water, and beyond there was a square which they for drying, just a plain square
with lines.
Well, yeah, they had to put their own lines up, bits of string and all sorts. And also there was an ash bin. They didn't have bins in those days. Ash tip.
So that you could take your embers out
and tip it like I forget what you'd call it, where you just tip your stuff through this hole, and then gradually they'd empty it. The council would empty it after a while when it got full.
Right.
Like an ash pit.
Yeah, ash pit, yeah.
Yeah. So what was the arrangement with the washing? What days could you have it on? Or?
Each house had their own one day, you know.
Oh, so you were lucky, because some of the bigger yards, they were like half a day or whatever, because there was sheer numbers using them. And so it didn't matter whether it was raining or not, that was your day.
That
was when...
Yeah.
And I told you they did this wall down the
middle, yeah.
Well, there was a tap at the bottom of this wall on the end of it, and that was the water for the houses and everything. You had to go down to the tap at the bottom of this wall.
Was that sort of a standpipe?
Yeah,
or?
well, it was stuck on the end of the wall.
Right. So you just took your buckets out or
That's
your pots and filled up. And that was the water that you took down to the coppers to heat up.
That's
for the
right,
washing.
Yeah.
Was there a mangle or anything down there?
I think they did have mango because I was only young anyway, so I was going to say it now. We, like I said, we had this bit of a privileged way, but eventually we had a tap in our own, in the kitchen of our own house. It was all cold water, of course.
Yeah.
And so they put, again, the privilege, being at the shop at the top, they put us a tap in the kitchen.
But none of the other houses in the yard had that?
No, they all had to go to the...
So who owned that yard?
Well, then eventually it became Mr. Dancer owned it. He was a plumber, and they were split in half, and the other half was Hopley.
Right, and you paid the rent to
Mr. Dancer.
To Mr. Dancer. Okay. What was it like as a kid playing there? Did you play in the yard or out on the street? Or?
Well, I never used to play in the yard because I didn't know anybody there, and my friends were all in around Stafford Avenue and that way and where. So I used to, it was only 7, but there wasn't the traffic in those days. I used to walk up to play with the friends at Stafford.
Right.
Avenue, Stafford.
Yeah, Stafford Avenue, yeah. So how many children lived in the yard? Can you remember?
Quite a few. I see them now. I mean, I do know them, but we're all best of friends now, but I couldn't tell you offhand now. There were quite a few.
Yeah. And what kind of jobs did people who lived in those houses do?
Some miners and some out factory workers. I think that covered most of it.
Did anybody else work from home?
No.
No, they all just went out when the bell went, they were off.
Right, yeah. There used to be sirens in those days for
Right.
factories.
Right. So which factory did most of them work in?
Well,
Because there's quite a few round.
Yes.
There's Wilson's and Stafford, Vero and Everett's,
Yeah.
Denham and Hargrave. They all had their share of work. And
So there was no particular factory that any of them worked
Oh, no,
for. It was just all mixed.
that's right.
Okay.
They didn't. The factories didn't own any of the houses or have anything to do with the setting of them. I don't think.
I can see on a little note here that it was only the shop that had a garden.
That's right. I was coming to that after a while. After the drying ground, on the length of quite a long stretch up to the drying ground after you'd gone to the toilets and the ash pit and whatnot, we had a garden which had a fence about 20 foot high and locked up so that
Nobody else could get in.
nobody else could get in. And that was quite a good garden actually.
Did you grow fruit and veg and things on
Yeah,
it?
and lots of veg, but not fruit because that was asking for trouble.
Get them scrumping over the trees.
But,
And you used to grow croissants and sell them in the
Yeah.
shop, didn't
a
you?
little bit
As
not.
a child.
That was your pocket money, grow
Yeah.
a few flowers and...
Yeah. So,
Did you keep any chickens or anything like
no,
that?
well, we haven't got the time really because by the time you come up to the top of it's quite a, it'd be 50, 60 yards I suppose, something like that to the top of the garden. And it was, I don't know whether you wouldn't know Atherstone much, would you? But the factory near to it was Hatton's hat factory, and they had bowling green and tennis courts at the top of our garden over the wall.
Oh, right.
So
you all got bits of garden at the end of the yard, backed on to their playing field
the
sort of
the
thing.
people in the other houses didn't get any garden at all. We were
The only one.
The
You
only
got
one.
the key to your toilet
Yeah.
and your own big garden.
Luxury, wasn't
Luxury.
Yeah. But that's the only reason we stayed, I think.
My sister played tennis, didn't she?
Yeah.
Like Joan.
So you were allowed to use the
Well,
factory?
you joined the club. They allowed you to join the Hatton's Bowling Cup and Tennis Club.
Right.
And there was a little pavilion there.
So your sister actually played?
Yeah.